Perfect.
Groovy.
That's what you want.
That is what you
Okay,
want.
you're live.
Oh, cool. All right.
Gentlemen and gentlethems, welcome to How to Write Love Poetry for Men. Thank you for being here with us today. Anthony McPherson, I'm grateful for your presence.
Oh, thank you.
Ars Poetica, much appreciation for the existence of your platform, making wonderful events such as this possible so that anyone, whatever their experience, can benefit from a little writing community. So my name is Logan, and I have here with me today my co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Bryson, coming to you live from the beautiful city of Chicago. Logan, where are you broadcasting from?
I'm coming from Montreal, Canada.
Oh, international workshop. Yeah, so I think we're going to give everyone just a little bit of time to trickle in on our various platforms. While we're doing that, when we give a little bit of our background, I am a writer/actor working here in Chicago. If you want to find me on social media, I'm on Instagram at Bryson David Hoff. Don't post that often, but if I do, that's where to find it. Logan, would you like to give yourself a little plug as our people filter in?
Yeah, sure. My name is Logan. As I already said, I am a writer and musician, hailing from Montreal. And if you want to connect with me via Instagram, you can find me at Logan Poem.
Groovy. All right. So why don't we start introducing the workshop, and then hopefully by that time people will have accumulated and we can jump into our exercises. So this is How to Write Love Poems for Men. It is a workshop intended to help male identifying people who are often not socialized to access their deeper emotions and express them, to flex those muscles a little bit with the goal of being able to create poetry that will speak to the special people in their lives, whether that's wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, non-binary, special others. So that's really what these exercises that we're going to go through today are meant to do, is to help you access those feelings and those thoughts in a way that's going to be conducive to creating that kind of a work, which can be so meaningful as a gift or just as a way to express your feelings.
And if you are signing in right now, please feel free to leave comments just saying hi and letting us know you're here. This way we can also say hello to you.
Yeah. All right, so
let me know when we're good to begin the first exercise, and we can do that.
Yeah, why don't we the thing changed, the layout of the screen changed, and it caught my eye. Yeah, since Tech is monitoring our various platforms, Tech, I know you've got a million things going on right now, but if you could just let us know when we're kind of good to introduce the first exercise so that we're not like leaving people in the dust, that would be much appreciated.
And if you're just coming in right now, welcome to How to Write Love Poetry for Men. We are about to begin our first exercise for the workshop, and we're just waiting for people to finish trickling in and getting a little heads up from our tech, letting us know that it's a good time to start.
Yeah, so Logan, why don't you introduce the first exercise of this workshop for us?
Great. So let's begin with a quick glance at what a love poem could look like. Explorations on the theme of love can include your experience of love. It can include the lack thereof. You can address love directly, personifying and writing to love. You might write to an object, a behavior, a person in your life, or even a fantasy or ideal love. Platonic love poems to a friend or family member are a thing, as is self-love poetry. Then there's lost love and, of course, unrequited love and romantic love. We compiled a list for you of poems that demonstrate various strong examples contemplating the theme of love in many forms. Many of these works we will touch upon today. So let's attach that to the chat with links, tech, if you are able to do that. This way you may have a glance and go forth with the benefit of inspiration as you read other poets to help you find your voice.
Right. So I believe just to sort of shake out the cobwebs, we had planned on beginning with just a real quick free write, just to get everyone accustomed to the idea of putting words on paper or in word processor, as your preference may be. So the idea here is to not necessarily begin constructing a poem. It's just to kind of get your feelings going. So once we give you the signal to start, we'd like it if you could just begin writing and don't stop until you have cleared out your, until you've cleared out your brain, essentially. It doesn't need to make sense, doesn't need to be on any specific theme. It's literally just to get you in the writing mindset.
Yep. One of the questions I hear writers ask often is, how do you go about sitting down to write? So I love lists, and I broke this down into small, easy steps to help us all get started. So step one, as I already mentioned, is read. Hopefully this part is somewhat simplified with the resource that you now have to start you off. We're not going to start reading now, but reading good poetry is the first step to understand what makes you tick. And that's where you can find your own material. Step two, this one is optional since we're not going to do it today, but it also won't work for everyone. However, I find that putting on some instrumental, electronic, or otherwise inspiring but not distracting music can really set the writing mood. Step three, get comfortable. Writing is not an easy task, nor is it necessarily comfortable to do, which makes your comfort level extra important. You don't even have to be still. You just be as comfortable and as at ease as possible, even if you are in motion. All right, so step four is starting with a free write, which Bryson mentioned. And we're gonna end with editing. What does that mean? It means we all have two sides to our brains, and each one serves a different purpose, creative and analytical. It's important for our writing to separate these two, otherwise we can get stuck. What is free writing in case you're new to the exercise? It involves putting ink to paper and letting your hand just write for an amount of time without thinking or judging. I know this is not easy if you're not used to it. So we're going to try a guided exercise with some poetry line prompts to get our juices flowing right now. Okay, so this is how it's going to happen. I'll read one or two lines of poetry from some of the listed poems, and you'll write them down. Then I will give you 1 minute to write anything that comes to mind. I prefer pen to paper for this, but if it's not your thing, you might try dimming your screen so as not to look at your work. If you have trouble getting started, just write your own version of the lines that I'm going to give you. All right, let's go. Line number 1. How loving you less might have been the sweetest gift I could have given my own life. I'll just repeat that. How loving you less might have been the sweetest gift I could have given my own life. We'll just take a minute. Okay. The next one, line number 2. I want the heavy to anchor me brave, anchor me loving, anchor me in something that will hold me. One more time. I want the heavy to anchor me brave, anchor me loving, anchor me in something that will hold me. Great. Line number 3. I love you as one loves the most vulnerable species, urgently, between the habitat and its loss. I love you as one loves the most vulnerable species, urgently, between the habitat and its loss. Excellent. Now we'll do line number 4. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom, but carries the light of those flowers hidden within itself. One more time. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom, but carries the light of those flowers hidden within itself. Line number 5. Your tongue is made of honey, but sticks like a snake's. Your tongue is made of honey, but flicks like a snake's. And last one. I can tell you we were right. Our bodies were right. Life was pleasurable in every cell. I can tell you we were right. Our bodies were right. Life was pleasurable in every cell. I invite you to put your pens down. Hope you all got something out of that. I'd like to drop your I'd like you to drop your favorite line in the chat if you feel brave enough, and keep the inspiration going among your peers. We want to see what you got done during this time. And next, we're gonna segue into a poetry reading and brief discussion. Is that right, Bryson?
Yes, that's what I have on my agenda for the day. So what we're going to do, Logan and I have each picked either one poem or one excerpt from a poem to read here on stream, and we're going to, after we've read our example, discuss what looking at this particular excerpt that we've chosen can tell us about what specifically goes into writing not just a poem, but a love poem. Some things to be aware of as you set down to write something in this specific genre. So Logan, would you like to go first, or should I go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first if you want, and then you can go from your reading and discussion into the editing portion.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Next. Okay, great. So I've chosen today a poem by Craig Santos Perez called Love in a Time of Climate Change, and I'm going to read that for you now. It's actually a poem recycling Pablo Neruda's sonnet number 17, which I've also included in the list for you today. Love in a time of climate change. I don't love you as if you were rare earth metals, conflict diamonds, or reserves of crude oil that cause war. I love you as one loves the most vulnerable species, urgently, between the habitat and its loss. I love you as one loves the last seed saved within a vault, gestating the heritage of our roots. And thanks to your body, the taste that ripens from its fruit still lives sweetly on my tongue. I love you without knowing how or when this world will end. I love you organically, without pesticides. I love you like this because we'll only survive in the nitrogen-rich compost of our embrace. So close that your emissions of carbon are mine. So close that your sea rises with my heat. Wow. So stanza 1, let's start with the beginning. It begins and ends with comparison lists, basically saying, I don't love you as a non-renewable resource that causes long-term damage. I love you as a living being that is necessary to the ecosystem and whose loss would devastate the Earth's very balance. This is a love of protection and care for the sustenance of life. Stanza number 2 continues to elaborate on the theme and grounds it for us with the reference to the lover's body. Stanza 3 is both playful and serious with the line about pesticides and survival. We are being shown here how he loves and also how we must live and die, with this open end leading into the last stanza. Stanza 4 is such a lovely and visceral way to tie it up. Words like compost, emissions, carbon even, what we exhale, what everything is made of. And it neatly refers back to the diamonds at the beginning of the poem as well. The last line is everything and has that spice that stays behind in your mouth when you're done reading. Yummy. I want to talk about the two most important things, maybe three little things, before I end my short discussion here of this poem. I took a workshop with poet Megan Falley, and she teaches something in the workshop called World of the Poem. And this very much applies here. The idea behind World of the Poem is that you choose a theme or image or world and use vocabulary within that world to enrich and create imagery and drive your point home. In this poem, we're talking about love and climate change. Something to keep in mind while you write. Another thing I learned is that the title and the first line of your poem invite the reader in or don't, and the last line of your poem determines whether or not the reader will remember your poem. So these are tools that are very important to consider when you're sitting down to write, but more importantly, when you're sitting down to edit your writing. Bryson, would you like to head into your discussion from here?
Yes, definitely. So the poem that I chose to bring to you today is called Axis. It is by the Mexican poet Octavio Paz. This is also included in the document that we sent out over chat if you want to follow along. Otherwise, you can just listen to my reading here, and I will go into a little bit about what this poem means to me in the context of what we're talking about today afterwards. Axis. Through the conduits of blood, my body in your body, spring of night, my tongue of sun in your forest, your body a kneading trough, I red wheat. Through conduits of bone, I night, I water, I forest that moves forward, I body, I sunbone. Through the conduits of night, spring of bodies, you night of wheat, you forest in the sun, you waiting water, you kneading trough of bones. Through the conduits of sun, my night in your night, my sun in your sun, my wheat in your kneading trough, your forest in my tongue. Through the conduits of the body, water in the night, your body in my body, spring of bones, spring of suns. Now, one of the reasons that I chose this poem, and one of the reasons why I've always loved Octavio Paz ever since I discovered his work back when I was in high school, is the amazing job he does of eroticizing the landscape. Logan talked a little bit about building the world of the poem, and a lot of Paz's work it's so much more about the atmosphere of it than it is about explaining anything that is literally happening within that world of the poem. He gives you this amazing landscape that is full of such specific images that repeat and cycle over and over again. Whenever I analyze one of his works, I always find it a lot easier to map the through lines throughout the poem of when he brings back these images and these themes, rather than taking the stanza by stanza approach that works better with the poem that Logan just dissected for you. So if you're following along, look at the way that he brings back the notion of conduits. It's there in the first line, through the conduits of blood, and then later through the conduits of the body, and in between that, conduits of bone and conduits of night, conduits of sun. It's this notion of the give and take between him and the love that he is addressing in this poem. One of the things to keep in mind as you set down to write your final product is to consider what the nature of the relationship is between you and your subject, and the way in which he immediately phrases and contextualizes his relationship with this object as this give and take, not just an exchanging, but an actual, like a river feeding in back and forth between the two of them. It immediately puts you in that erotic state of mind. So if you're writing a poem for someone who you have that kind of an intimate sexual relationship with, this is a pretty good roadmap as to how to put that eroticism into the poem without feeling like you're airing your dirty laundry or putting stuff out on display in a crude or pornographic way. There is definitely a time and place in some poets who do that in artistic ways, but I think that Octavio Paz, especially, if this is something that you like, I encourage you to seek out more of his work, because every time he's writing a love poem, it is this kind of dreamy, erotic state. And I think a really great introduction to this style of love poetry, if this is what you're looking to do. So on that theme, as we sit down here for the editing process, I want you to keep two things in mind here as we invite you here, and I'll explain sort of what we're going for in this section of the workshop. So if you're coming here, I'm assuming that you have some person in mind that you would like to be writing a poem for. So I encourage you to look at what you wrote in response to the lines that Logan gave you and pick out some words, some phrases, and set them aside. Words and phrases that speak specifically to the person who you are looking to write this poem for and the nature of your relationship to that person. One of the things that really separates the good love poems from the bad in our estimation, and we talked about this as we were planning this workshop, is specificity and stuff that is going to specifically speak to your significant other. So like flowers are a very cliche image in love poems, and it's fine to include flowers in your poetry if the person you are talking to has a special connection to flowers. But that may not be the case. In Axis, Octavio Paz's subject seems to be more responsive to the bread making imagery than he doesn't include flowers in there at all. So that kind of a specificity as to what does your love like and what do you like to do together. So I encourage you to pick through those responses that you wrote to Logan's prompts, as well as to, once you've gone through there, if you've got a little bit of time, generate some more ideas and put them into a word bank, just a list of words and phrases that you can draw from as we begin to construct the poem. So I'm going to give y'all just a little bit of time to do that right now, and then we will reconvene and go from there. Okay, I would encourage you all to finish your current thought and then put pens down. So the next thing that we want to talk about here, now that we have this list of terms, these words, these ideas, these thoughts, is to consider the goal of the poem. And this ties back into the nature of your relationship with your subject. Now, if this is someone who you would like to have a relationship with, but do not currently have a relationship with, your goal is to invite this person to think of you in that context. And that's going to change which of these words and these phrases will be more helpful to you, as opposed to if this is a person whom you are married to or have a long-standing existing relationship to, in which case your goal might be to express how much you appreciate that relationship and how much that relationship means to you, or to reflect on your time spent together and how it has shaped your life. These goals are going to vary from person to person. There's probably going to be as many of them within this group as there are people in this workshop right now. So I invite you to reflect on that and then begin to organize these thoughts in a way that speaks to the goal of your poem. And that's really going to hone in on the specifics of the relationship, because these two ideas are not separate ideas. They are very intertwined ideas. So I'm going to invite you now to take just a minute to, whether this is something that you do mentally or whether this is something that you want to build a diagram for yourself on paper, continue to list, draw connections between the words on your list, whatever's going to work best for your brain, so that you have all of these thoughts mapped out for you, so that when you sit down to write the poem, you're able to focus on things like wording and structure rather than on trying to generate ideas. So I'm going to give just a little time to do that.
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Logan. I've been talking far too much.
No, not at all. I was just wondering if it's a good moment for me to just interject before we give people a minute to consider your notes. I just wanted to build on what Bryson is saying about having a goal or a thesis in your poem. This helps you make sure that your words that you choose for your word bank, or that you decide to look up for your word bank, are intentional and serve the greater purpose of advancing your narrative towards this goal. And talking about specifics, adding details from your life and using images that you build from those details are what makes your poem not just unique, but one that only you could have possibly written.
Yes. Very, very useful. Also, I just saw a message that we got from a viewer on Facebook. It's under the name Person is Awake. Thinking of the goals is helpful. Can you give more examples? Like, is the goal how we want her to feel or what I want to get out of it? And I would say it could be either of those. Yeah, it's a very, very good question. I think it can be either of those things. Something that I have done in the past when I've been in this kind of a, like, you know, what am I trying to do with this poem? I have honestly written the same poem from both directions. And something that I think is very interesting as far as this specific topic goes is that these two things are very interrelated. Like, because we're talking about the relationship between two people, if you are looking to get your beloved to do something for you, in order to make that work for you in a way that's going to build the relationship as opposed to harm it, you kind of have to get your beloved to see your point of view on it and to, you know, get her to feel this way. So it's really, that's sort of my immediate response to it. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on this topic, Logan. That's sort of my my immediate response to this question.
Yeah, of course. And I think that when you're writing a poem, ultimately it's going to be about you no matter what, because you're the one who's writing it. So what you want to get out of it absolutely is relevant. In terms of how you want someone else to feel when you're writing a poem, what I would advise for that is to read it to that person or someone else beforehand, because reading your poem aloud, either to yourself or to another person especially, can give you good feedback, really important feedback about if they're getting your feelings when they're reading the poem. So creating imagery in such a way that what I'm seeing and what I'm reading gives me no choice but to feel what you're telling me or what you're describing to me. And so my advice to you in this situation is to recollect and think back on the times of your life when you felt love for this person, and what did that look like? If your pen was a camera, what would your pen say? What would your pen show me about how you love this person that would absolutely give me no choice but to feel those feelings by seeing what you're seeing in that image?
Very well put. You're so eloquent. I very much envy that. So why don't we give our participants just a couple of minutes to start organizing these loose thoughts into maybe a couple of lines. I don't know that we're going to have time within this workshop to, get a full poem out, but I really want to make sure that we at least leave y'all with the opportunity to get the beginnings of something out, maybe a stanza or two. And if you feel comfortable sharing it, would love it if you would drop just a favorite line or two in the chat, just so that we can sort of see what we're working with. And then with whatever time we have left at the end, we invite you to ask more questions, generate more discussion. Thank you very much, Person is Awake, for that very nice little springboard into discussion.
Yeah, thanks for that insightful question. And starting our comments off, if you have other questions, we're going to be holding a little Q&A, and I don't mind staying for 5 or 10 extra minutes to answer some questions. And please feel free to drop your Instagram or your Facebook as well. We're trying to create a community here, and it would be great if people share and then keep sharing afterwards. All right, we have a couple of minutes left here. I have just a little example that maybe we might want to finish off with before the Q&A.
Yeah, go for it.
Just a world of the poem line exercise that could be useful in terms of trying to transform your language and elevate it, and also in terms of creating imagery. So if you're describing your lover and your world of the poem is, let's take your world of the poem, Bryson, like
Yes.
landscape, the earth or landscape.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to say something like, "It was love at first sight." Now that's telling instead of showing, and it's a boring, untransformed cliche, which we want to stay away from. But cliches can actually be useful in poetry in the sense that they can be a springboard, a place to start off from. You can take a cliche and take it further, or you can take a cliche and use an image in its place. So, for example, I might say, instead of "It was love at first sight," I might say, "I look into your eyes and I'm hooked for life, drinking in your oasis to my parched mind." Something like that, where we're using imagery. I'm not even necessarily saying that this line is good, but it's better than the cliche that that was used at the beginning. And so this is something that you might want to think about when you're writing, is how do I take this further? How do I elevate the language? Not so that it is so far removed that I can't tell what you're trying to say, but just that so that it gives me my language and my feeling and the image, that extra oomph that makes me connect to it as a reader.
Yeah, something that absolutely 100%. Something that I personally love to do is take advantage of the fact that these cliches have such an ingrained meaning to people that you're then able to play off of them in interesting ways. Like, cliches are really only bad in my view if you're using them without observation. And I think some of my favorite poems are literally built on examining these cliches in a critical manner.
We have another question here.
I love this question.
By the name of Gay Face. I love the name. Any references for poems about queer masculine love? Absolutely, there are references in the list. And how do we give the poem? Do we read it aloud? Do we mail it? Is it a voice memo? Now, I actually, this is a great question. In terms of the medium that you might use to deliver your poem, that's absolutely your choice. There's so many creative ways for a poem to reach someone's ears or eyes. And so that really depends on what works best for you as the person who is composing the poem and who will be either reading it or sending it, as well as the person who's receiving it in terms of how they might best receive the poem. I personally love to record poems. I think it's a great way to share something and have my voice in someone's ears for whenever they're ready to receive it. I love performing a poem for someone in person, if that's the kind of relationship that I have with them. Bryson, do you have anything to add to this response?
Yeah. I think, again, it feeds into a little bit of what we were talking about in terms of the writing process, is to also think about the nature of your relationship to this person, and also what is going to make you feel the most confident in delivering what can be a very vulnerable expression. Is your relationship with this person at the place, and do you have the sort of confidence within you to do a direct reading face to face with this person? Because if so, great. Like, that can be a very powerful experience. But also, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I don't think it's a smart idea to push yourself to take that route, because that's going to, it's going to harm the delivery if you're not 100% confident doing that. So then in that case, something like a voice memo that has that level of personality to it is going to, that can be a nice little middle ground. But if it's something where you'd feel most comfortable just writing it off and delivering it to them in a written form, like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about considering what's going to be most comfortable for you and what's going to make the most sense given the nature of your relationship to your subject.
And whatever is also the most powerful for you.
Yeah, and it can also vary by poem. Some poems are written to be read out loud, and some poems are written to be read on the page.
Exactly. And I think at least half of the poets that are in there are gay or talking about queer love. So we definitely paid attention to diversity when it comes to the expression of love with our list. So please do go through it. Most of
Do we want to just like rattle off which of the poets on that list might be a good idea to check out, just to like save some time if you're looking for that?
So we have Andrea Gibson, we have Audre Lorde, we have Craig Santos Perez, we have Frank O'Hara, Langston Hughes, Matthew Arnold, Moira Egan, Octavio Paz, Pablo Neruda, Ross Gay, Sharon Olds, Shirla Ehrlichman, Walt Whitman, William Shakespeare, and William Wordsworth. So that's a nice list of poets for you to go through there.
Yeah, and as far as like specifically the queer masculine ones, I know of the ones that I put on that list. Frank O'Hara has a lot of poems about queer masculine love.
Ross Gay too.
Walt Whitman, quite famously. Despite they might have told you in high school English class, like very, very gay and very upfront about it.
Can I make a suggestion about how to give the poem?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. So what I do, whether it's someone I'm unfamiliar with or whether I've been dating for years, this always works, is say, hey, I wrote you a poem. Would you want to hear it? And maybe even do that over text. And be prepared for them to say no and be okay with that. Because like maybe they don't want your poem, bro, and that's totally fine. And then if they do want it, it builds this realm of mystique and intrigue, which is good for the poem. So with a grain of salt, I guess.
Great suggestion. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that. Consent is sexy, everyone. Remember that.
Yes.
Not just in poetry, but in everything.
Absolutely, and necessary.
All right.
And I mean, if the person doesn't want to hear your poem, you can still put it out into the world. That doesn't mean that this is the end of the poem for you. If someone doesn't want to hear your poetry, that's okay. You can still write it for them, and you can still put it out into the world and say your piece. That's literally what it's for.
Yeah, I know that I've like when I like the first collection that I published back when I was still in college. A lot of those poems were I didn't even really like. I had no intention of ever like presenting them to the people that I wrote them about, but like just being able to draw from those people and what I observed about them, even though I had no real, intention of pursuing anything real. It's like that can be a great source of inspiration. And as long as you're not putting out anything that would, could trace back to them and make them uncomfortable, like there's nothing at all wrong with that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to writing about people, changing names or, using an initial or basically fictionalizing your character helps a lot in terms of removing them a little bit from your life. This way you don't have to worry about any kind of repercussions or discomfort that could arise from using certain subject material or people in your work.
Yeah. Yes, all very, very good. Very good tips. If you want.
Oh, you're welcome, Bowery Poetry Club. Thanks for showing up.
Dang.
For chiming in. Lovely to see you here.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Wow. Dang. I feel very humbled in the presence of the Bowery Poetry Club.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think this is really amazing what y'all said about how the love poem doesn't necessarily have to be delivered to the recipient. It could be you just processing your feelings toward the subject, be it a person, place, or yourself even,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions today? I think we're almost ready to wrap up. I'll just wait a minute or two for anyone to get their words together and see if something pops up before we close up for today.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than being almost there on the wording and then the stream ends.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, dang. Though if you do have any lingering questions, I believe we've all given out our our social media tags if you want to slide into our DMs and, you know, ask any questions privately. And I know that I'm perfectly happy to respond to anything on that subject if it's something that you don't necessarily want to share with the group, or if it's something that only occurs to you after the fact.
Absolutely. I'm available to listen to or read something that you have or want to develop and talk to you about it. Please feel free. You can get in touch with me at Logan Poem on Instagram, or with Bryson
At Bryson David Hoff on
there
Instagram.
you go.
And likewise, if you want to send me love poems with me as the subject.
Oh yeah. Yes, definitely
so
also open to that.
McPherson. My name's right there. And
What a
then just
relief.
add
I have something to
poetry.
send you after this.
I'm always open for a love poem. So give me what you got. See what you learn in
That's Bryson David Hoff. There in the chat.
Yep. Tech, it's Bryson David Hoff at on Instagram.
Yeah. No, I don't know who David Bryson Hoff is, but they
Yeah,
might
you're not going to get the right person.
Yeah. They might also have some good
Someone
tips for
sends you a
you,
love poem.
but I cannot endorse anything that they say one way or to other.
Okay, great. It looks like we're done here for today. I would like to thank you again for being here. My name is Logan. Thank you, Bryson. Thank you, Anthony. And thanks once again, Tech and Ars Poetica, for making this happen today. I love you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tech.
Thanks, Tech, for sticking in there with us.
And good job, both of y'all. And yes, thanks. Like they said, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.